Welcome back to the third installment of APN's Black History Month series. February is over, but the conversation is still as pertinent now as ever. I'm lucky to be joined by two colleagues and friends, Kofi Asante and Shane Thomas. Guys, thank you so much for coming in and being here and hanging out with me today.
Yeah, thank you for having us. Yeah.
So, a little bit, just introductions right off the bat. Kofi, you've been incredibly successful in the startup space and in entrepreneurship and just as an innovator in college. I've known you for 4 years through your time at Tufts, and it's been remarkable watching you do all this. Can you tell us a little bit about your background in that space?
Yeah, so first of all, thank you for having me here. But I'm from Austin, Texas. My dad's from Ghana, my mom's from New York. One thing that's been interesting being at Tufts as a liberal arts school is thinking about how do you solve problems from a business perspective. I think something that's so beautiful about Tufts is you're able to meet with people who are outside of what you care about. But at the same time, when you want to get into the nitty gritty of business, it doesn't always provide a platform for that. So the reason that I mention that is because I think the only reason I've been able to have any amount of success in the startup world is because I'm around people who are touching other pieces of things outside of business, designers, marketers, when it comes to coding, engineers, and we have such a robust community for that. And everybody's so supportive and collaborative here too. So yeah.
Now, Shane, you've been sort of the scholar athlete for a long time. You joined a football team here that hadn't won a game in
4
several years.
Yeah. It was wild.
Came in as a freshman with that around your neck and helped lead a team to be 7-1 this year, incredibly successful on the field. But just before we started rolling, we were talking about, you mentioned I'm here not just as an athlete, I'm here to use my brain.
And learn,
So, talk about the motivation behind that and how you balanced what's got to be, 30, 40 hours a week of work
commitment,
with your academics?
Yeah, so it's sort of, I guess, coming from I'm from Brooklyn, New York. My mom's from London. My dad's from New York. I always just wanted to be in spaces that I wasn't really comfortable in, really challenge myself to be in places that I'm not really aware of. I never wanted to be the smartest person in the room. And with football, that's it's different. You're more, you're competing. It's a race here. It's who can make this tackle. Who can make this play. But in the classroom, this Tufts University is one of the top, most prestigious schools. And I always wanted to challenge myself. Any space, any class. From taking women's studies classes to classes about John Locke's State of Nature. It's all about being uncomfortable and how do you respond in those situations. That's always really been my goal, and I think I've accomplished that since I've been here.
I would definitely say so. I haven't known you for a while.
Yeah,
you guys both, I thought it was interesting, you both brought up your families, unprompted.
Yeah.
So obviously it plays a big role in who you are. What kind of role have your mom and dad and the rest of your family has played in your life to this point?
Yeah, it's huge. I mean, I'm sure you got an interesting story.
You both do.
Yeah, for me, honestly, everything that has gone right is probably because of them, to be honest. And I don't mean that to overestimate their role in my life, but just to state the realistic situation. I know that not everybody has parents who are able to be there for them and support them, so I never take that for granted. And my dad has pushed education over and over again. My mom was a professor, and if I need to go anywhere, if I need to go to a basketball tournament, if I need to go to a debate tournament, if I need to go across town to another school, they were the ones to drive me there. And they are continually just such a huge piece of support for me. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's pretty similar for me as well. I was sort of, my mom was sort of the horse. She was cooking dinner. She was bringing us to games. She was being mom, dad, the doctor. And that's sort of her sort of. But in that, she played so many different roles, right? So she's the party planner when she needs that, but she's the sort of, she's the sort of no nonsense, strict attitude when I'm sort of feeling bad about myself. And you need that. You need someone that's going to play those roles. And everything I do, everything I've ever achieved, at Tufts or in life or anything, it will be due to my family, my brother and my parents, my grandparents, just their constant prayers, their constant the confidence that they sort of infuse in me to be great and to be the best at anything I do is really it's all to them. So everything I achieve is it's really not because of me. It's because of them and what they've sort of instilled in me. So.
Yeah, and Shane, you brought up a good point about faith too. And I know we've talked about that a number of times, but and I've talked with you a lot
I'm
about
glad
that.
I was just
too.
actually about to ask.
Yeah, about faith, right? And that's such a huge component to a lot of the motivation that's gone in for me, and I'm sure for you also, Shane. Just understanding that there's a bigger picture to everything, and that you're not alone in this trek that you're going through, and that there's a bigger plan. And my family's done an amazing job of making sure that we take the love from religion instead of the condemnation, and that's been a huge pillar.
Yeah, definitely. It's it's sort of. I mean, it's so hard. You go to college. I didn't go to boarding school, so this was sort of my first experience being alone, being away from my family, and sort of it's you need to figure it out, and you have to have a level of self-understanding and self-awareness to succeed, and none of that is. No one just wakes up like that. No one just leaves. You don't say bye to your parents, give them hugs and kisses, and suddenly you're this ultra confident human being. That just doesn't happen. And you need prayer. You need an understanding of who you are, and that for me that always came with my religion, my faith. So that's really the only way I've been able to succeed.
Right.
So.
Especially when things aren't going well.
Yeah, exactly.
Like, right?
Yeah,
That's huge.
Especially
yeah.
You guys talk about the adversity you face when you go away from home. You go, for both you guys, like a pretty long way.
Yeah.
To add to that, you're at a school that's predominantly white. 3% is the rough number for people of color or black folks at school.
Yeah.
How has that added to the challenges of being away and finding who you are and doing school and sports and business? What's that been like?
Yeah. I'll start. Yeah. Well, really, from going to, I've always sort of been used to being sort of in the minority. I've gone to private schools, in middle school through high school, so it was something that it was sort of my parents always told me this is sort of what the real world is like. You need to sort of get used to it and get acclimated to it, but also understand who you are and find your find your thread and find ways that you can be successful. And so I never really saw it as something as a difference or as something that sort of separated us or differentiated us. I always tried to find things that we had in common, and things that we both enjoyed. And so football, for me, sports was always that outlet, because it doesn't really matter what your race is on the football field. Can you make this play? Are you going to work hard enough? Are you going to put in the necessary effort to be successful? And that's really what sports to me is about. It's not about wins and losses. Obviously, it's about winning. No one plays a game to lose, but it's about bringing people together and working together and achieving things that you could not achieve on your own. And that's really what sports has been to me, and how it sort of helped me through this process.
Yeah, and for me, my parents, as I mentioned before, have gone out of their way to make sure that I get the best education that I can. And I did go to a boarding school by my choice when I was 14. And I remember thinking to myself, there's nobody here that really looks like me at all. And I've seemed to find a similar trend whenever my parents went out of their way to put me in a place of success, that there are a few minorities. And I think on the surface, a lot of times it can look like minorities wouldn't be able to thrive, but what I've continued to learn and to understand is that there are a lot of things that have put us at a disadvantage institutionally and historically that just simply still need to be addressed. And also that equating the successful environments with simply being white is another issue that needs to be addressed. As you can see here with Shane, there's so many talented and ambitious minorities, and it's because of their dedication, and then also because of the families that they have, that they're able to push these barriers. But it's still crazy to think that when you're in these spaces, a lot of times you can still be a pioneer of some sort because there are so few of you. So it's been a difficult process, being comfortable with who you are, not wishing you were someone else. Um, but I think for the most part, I've seen a lot of love, especially at Tufts, and also a lot of love from the minority community too. I could go on forever about what it feels like to be alone in this space, but at the core of it, it's just something that you have to continue to be reflective about. And then to follow up with that with business, similar to what you were saying, Shane, the cool thing about specifically disruptive technology and disruptive innovation is that it is in its nature supposed to go against the status quo. So when you're coming up with ideas and concepts, you judge on them based on the merit in the market and the team that you surround yourself with. And I think at Tufts it's been phenomenal being able to consistently find people who wanna change what there is.
Yeah, and just to piggyback off that, I think that's a huge point. I don't want to speak for you, but I think I've been very fortunate to have parents that were able to afford me certain opportunities that the average black student cannot afford, especially black student at Tufts who may be on financial aid, who has to do a work study. I think there's so many things that still need to be done for people that are not able to, that just don't have those opportunities, and because of that, don't understand, not simple, but don't understand, are not able to assimilate, or not able to sort of blend in with the sort of status quo that is a Tufts University or a private wealthy institution that is Tufts, or really any major university or major institute. I think there are so many things that I've learned that I've been afforded, and I'm pretty privileged in that category. And there's and most black students who go to a Tufts or an Ivy League school or a NESCAC school, they struggle because they've never they haven't had those opportunities. They haven't been able to do certain things, and because of that, they're put in this world and expected to be successful, expected to achieve these goals, and expected to excel in this world that really was not made for them to succeed in. I think that's really one of the biggest issues that we face. One student comes out and it's seen as sort of we're doing a lot and we're making changes, and I think it's not about one, it's really about all. That's sort of the next step that needs to be taken.
That's so huge. And the culture shock that you're referring to, I do want to agree with you. I think that it's because of my parents putting me through the schooling that I had, going to the type of boarding school that I went to, that prepared me for this environment. But one thing that I think isn't talked about enough is the fact that we are individuals at our core. We are not simply black, we're not simply white. And for that reason, whenever you're going through a rigorous situation, you're going to make mistakes. You're going to be uncomfortable. There are going to be times where you may be afraid to speak up. The difference is for black students, and please let me know if you also feel this way, for black students, that's even heightened. So if you're uncomfortable in a course, or if you feel like you're struggling at some point in time, that's looked upon as like you and your group would not have been able to do this. And that's just simply not fair. So there's always, when you walk in a room or whenever you're in a class, there's always this added pressure and layer to immediately be successful, but that's just not the case for all individuals. And so thinking about that double consciousness, that double perception of how you're perceived and how that makes you act is something that you always have to keep kind of wrestling with.
I want to follow up with that and ask, the three of us have talked a lot about who does the onus fall on to educate. I think you guys are both, I've seen you numerous times be incredibly patient and loving and really kind with your time and energy, showing white people things that they just don't even think about, just educating them to structural, systemic problems that just create boundaries that you don't even see if you're not in that situation. But there's another school of thought that says it shouldn't be on minorities to have to educate. White folks should educate themselves. And I'm curious, where you guys fall on that. I know we've talked about it a lot before, but I'd love to hear your thoughts now.
Great question.
You start.
Yeah, I mean, that's a great question. I do believe that it's not on minorities to educate, and that can be incredibly draining. But I do believe that the intimate conversations and the intimate relationships that you're able to build that people who don't think or look like you are what begin to move opinions and move people's hearts in the right direction. And I think even our relationship has been really fruitful that way, where you're consistently asking deep questions because you care. And there's a difference between you caring and you just wanting to write this down in a notebook. This is something that is really, really on your heart. And so I think it's not as literally black and white as we're making it. I think that it's a combination of the interest that comes from one side and the willingness from another side. But there are times when it can be draining.
It's hard for me to put the onus on someone to understand a struggle that they've never really endured. I think it is tiresome work to sort of constantly have to. You feel like you're almost you're saying it over and over again. But I think it's sort of the onus really has to be on the Black community to sort of talk about the issues and the struggles that we have, because there's so many minute details that individuals really don't even come across their mind, because they have no. Why would they? Why would you think about that? Why would you? So it's really hard. It's really hard, and also there's so many needs. There's so many people on this campus. From all over. We have people from Ghana, Nigeria. We have people from all over the world, right? And there's so many needs that a student from Indiana, how could they possibly understand? It's impossible. So it needs to be. And that's where what you were talking about before. It needs to be a conversation. It needs to be, an individual that is interested in understanding and truly learning, and not someone that's simply interested in writing, op-eds. Someone that really wants to better themselves and better the community. And from there, that's how that dialogue starts, and that's how we really make improvements. That's really the only way.
Yeah, a great point that Shane also brought up. Was that the Black experience is still unique within different groups, even within the Black community. My dad, being from Ghana, West Africa, has a completely different view on what it means to be Black in America from my mom, who grew up in New York. And then me, as an African American growing up in the South, will have a different one than my friends Rod or Jonas, who live up here in the North. And I think that can be said not only from the Black experience, but I'd imagine from a lot of other groups. And so it's impossible for a community who has had the luxury of not necessarily having to think critically about their positions of power or how they're perceived, to know the nuances of what each group is thinking about. And that's why you're right. I think it is a conversation, but a consensual conversation, not a forced one. Yeah.
Well, obviously after this past presidential campaign, not that it wasn't an issue before, but now more than ever, race in America is something that is wide open for everyone to see as a national issue. Our generation is about to graduate from college. There's a big chunk of young folks ready to go into the workforce to contribute to professional life, become adults, and contribute to political life as well. What do the next 10, 20 years look like, do you guys think? Are we getting better or are we getting worse?
I have an interesting idea about this. It's not factually supported at all.
No, this is totally, and I don't feel like you have to speak on behalf of.
Yeah, of course. These are my own individual experiences. Yeah, thank you for mentioning that if I didn't already. Okay, here's my theory. I think that specifically because now we're faced with a president or a political climate that forces us to make decisions about the way we perceive people who don't look like us, I think that can actually have a positive impact in the long term. in the short term, I think there are a lot of things and a lot of rhetoric that's been dangerous, and it's very hard to see millions of people get behind this. But I think that having a president or having a political climate that resembles the past and the past and the past is unfortunately just going to yield us the same results. And so I'm very interested to see, and I'm being extremely optimistic because I'm just tired of being cynical about it, that hopefully, because now people have to make a decision about where do they stand on Latinos being here in America, blacks, the whole spectrum, Muslims, that maybe people start to make the right decisions.
I'm really not sure. I think it's I think I'm taking. It's pretty crazy. I'm taking a ton of classes that are talking about sort of the cycle that I guess the cycle that we're on. As a country, we have George Bush, and then we have the crash of the economy, and everyone's like screw the Republicans. These guys are terrible. We need a new face. We need a new change. And then Obama comes, and everyone's like, wow, this is post-racial society, and we've moved on, and like this is a whole new world. And we have Donald Trump, talking about his rhetoric. And so I think it's hard to sort of predict where we're going when it at times feels like we're still trapped in the 1960s, 1920s. Obviously we've relations have improved, but I think you can never tell. You can never know. Because there'll always be a section or a part of the community that feels sort of neglected, that sort of feels like they haven't that elites are ignoring, and clearly there was a huge portion of the country that felt that way with our recent election, and Trump will be president for the next 4 years, and we'll see if he gets reelected. But everything is. You want to say it cycles, but you never really know because there's so many different communities that feel like they're being pushed aside or neglected. So it's really impossible to know. The only thing that you can really work on is the sort of the relationships and the conversations you have and improving your community, because clearly there's so many communities out there that do not feel a part, do not feel like they have a say, and it's pretty tough to see, but it's pretty clear with, our election and the things that have been going on.
No matter what you guys do next year and in the years to come, I know for a fact you're going to be in situations where you are just up against the wall, and it's really tough. You go after that, and I know you do too, but there's still days that are just really, really hard.
Yeah.
When that happens, what do you guys lean on? Who's your role model? Who's your inspiration? What gets you through the really just unendingly difficult days?
Yeah, well, I'm going to take this one because I just had to deal with that on repeat. I mean, going through this job selection process has been incredibly difficult, and I think by default I've tried to take notes on how I'm dealing with failure, because I think that tells you more about who's going to be successful than how you're dealing with it when everything's going well. And so for me, it's been pretty simple. My faith, like talking with Christ, building a relationship with Him, and sometimes it's as simple as saying, "I don't know what's going on, help me." Like, it's that easy, and then staying grounded with people like you in my life, and my girlfriend Raquel, and my family, people who believe in you and see the best in you regardless of what's going on, and remembering that God does have these promises that everything's going to be all right, but you have to hold on to them.
Yeah, I think it's pretty similar for me. I think I've never because I've got a massive family, and we're so close. I've really tried to avoid relying on people that I don't know, or people that I'm unfamiliar with. It just doesn't feel very comfortable for me. I've always sort of tried to rely on my family, and if I don't have that family around, just sort of figure it out. And I think sort of as I've gotten older, I've found, I've created relationships with people that I feel like I can trust, and but really at the end of the day, it starts with sort of my faith and sort of just how I pray and when I pray, and that's sort of it's sort of how I get through things, and it's like I was like talking about like, oh, it's like you always want to be uncomfortable and all this great stuff, and obviously that's like we all want to do that, but that's very hard. That's a very difficult way to live life, and it's challenging, and you need something to fall back on. You need something that can hold you up when everything is being thrown at you. And I think God has really been there for me, and He's been my rock. And then my family, and obviously my girlfriend as well. She's sort of held me down in ways that I cannot even describe. And I think sort of that's really the reason why that I'm here, honestly.
Yeah, and I think it's also great to have these type of conversations, because I feel like sometimes on the surface, for a lot of people, on paper it'll look like things went well the whole time, but they won't tell you about like the 30 rejections to get that one thing that made sense for them, or they won't tell you about the time when they were up till 4 a.m. when things just weren't working, or the time that they were just simply crying, just broke down crying. And I think it's great to acknowledge those points, not as a sign of weakness, but a sign of accomplishment, honestly. And I'm glad you brought that up, because I just think that needs to be more at the forefront of things, especially for mental health's sake too. It's okay to get tired and to get frustrated, but everything does work out well if you just keep pushing on.
What advice would you have for someone, a young kid, 6, 7, 8, 9, elementary school age, who watches this, sees you two, and thinks, wow, these kids, these guys, these men really are doing something pretty amazing. I'd love to follow in their footsteps. I'd love to succeed like that. What would you say to him or her?
I think I think you say the same. We try our best to keep this to keep it together as well as possible, but it's hard. And it's okay to struggle, but always be yourself. Like, it's so simple, but like, just be yourself and be. It's okay to be. It's okay to not be a part of every group. It's okay to just do what makes you feel comfortable, really. And it sounds like sounds so simple, but it's really very hard to do. When you come to college and you have so many people pulling you in so many different directions, and you're out on your own, or even in high school, you're trying. There's so many different things that your eyes are being opened up to, and you really you need to stay. It's truly in your benefit to stay grounded in what you believe in, and grounded in what you've been raised with, because at the end of the day, that's all you're really going to have in order to be successful. You just got to trust yourself and understand yourself, and just can't have any regrets. Just
Yeah, I completely second that. I think for me, and it's something that my dad's always told me, is that you've got to follow not your heart in the sense of making it sporadic, but you've got to go after the things that you feel like you're called to do. Absolutely. If that's entrepreneurship, if that's being a doctor, whatever it is, don't let anyone tell you that you can't do that. And figure out different methods that work for you, not to necessarily just be successful, but to deal with rejection and failure. Get very comfortable being uncomfortable. Those things have been so huge to me, especially considering the things that haven't been done are scary, and the things that you want to do in the future a lot of times can be daunting or a lot of work, but it is grueling. It's a lot of work and it's tiring, but it's okay. Figure out ways to keep yourself sane, whether it's going on a walk with someone you really care about, or whether it's praying really quickly, whatever it is, just really get good at dealing with rejection and failure, because it comes, and it comes in waves. And honestly, in my opinion, the closer you are to the goal that I feel like God has for you, the more rejection and failure you've probably been through.
Amazing advice from you both. Thanks so much for coming in. And I was joking with you before. You asked me what we're going to talk about, and I said we're just going to come in and talk. Yeah. And this was wonderful. So thanks for sharing your time and your honesty with me and everyone else who's watching.
And thanks for having us.
Yeah, thank you so much, Zach. Appreciate it.
Thanks,
Yeah, of course. Thanks, man.